Look around yourself. Observe your actions and that of others and question, why do we choose to do things in a defined manner, like using cutlery instead of eating with our bare hands, or restraining ourselves while conversing with others, cautious of not offending them? According to the French sociologist Pierre Bourdieu, the fundamental task of sociology is to recognize how societal constraints impose themselves upon us without being recognized. And we further reinforce these constraints by not questioning everyday representations and common sense knowledge. Manners are one of the pervasive restraints imposed on an individual by society. Despite being widely acknowledged as a social construct that has significantly varied in time and place, its elusive nature binds everyone to a varying degree. No matter how pride someone takes in flowing against the tide, there are certain norms they can't break. At the same time, no one can flawlessly maneuver their way through the infinitude of these social norms. It is hard to trace the historical origin of manners, which are widely believed to have appeared when humans started living together in groups. In the Civilizing process, Norbert Elias mentions that instructions on conduct could be found since the Middle Ages, where the courtly upper class, mostly the courtly circles around the great feudal lords, designated a specific code of behaviour that distinguished them in their own eyes. This aristocratic, self-conscious behaviour took the term of courtesy. From there, it spread to broader strata. In Renaissance, the question of behavior gained further importance. People developed a greater sense of others' expectations and what they should or shouldn't do to avoid offending them. In 1530, the Dutch philosopher and Catholic theologian Desiderius Erasmus published On Civility in Children, which achieved enormous circulation, influencing a whole genre of books on the topic. Those who lived in behavior-setting circles, for example the court, didn't need books to know how to behave. However, the book's success resulted from the leading bourgeoisie strata, who wanted to imitate the upper class. The behaviors and fashions of the court circle were penetrating the upper middle classes, thereby losing their distinguishing upper-class character. According to Norbert Elias, shame and embarrassment can also play a role in accentuating class-specific differences. He defines shame as a fear of social degradation and a feeling of inferiority that arises from the fear of transgressing social prohibitions. He defines embarrassment as the displeasure when someone else threatens or breaches society's prohibitions instilled in an individual. In the days when the nobility belonged to the upper stratum of the society, and the bourgeoisie was a rising social group, those belonging to the upper class reciprocally supervised each other to prevent its member from breaching the distinguishing code. For them, self-restraint had a prestige value, and they didn't want the differences between them and the bourgeoisie to be eliminated. When the differences in social power between the upper and lower class groups are significant, the upper classes tend to colonize the lower classes, and the lower classes tend to imitate the upper classes. However, as the differences in their social power diminish, they both emphasize their difference. In the case of the upper class, the differences are consolidated, and the walls between the classes grow higher. The fact that these modes of conduct were formed within the upper class and were then passed on to the other strata of the society reveals something about the structure of the society. But why should the upper class have the prerogative to legitimize the modes of behavior in society? According to Pierre Bourdieu, practices such as refinement of conduct and etiquettes, because they presuppose higher economic and cultural capital, could have only existed among the upper classes and are distinguished as rare. While with lower economic and cultural capital, developed a taste of necessity which is further away from such superfluous demeanor. Although his theories are concerned with tastes and preferences, they could be applied to manners as well. In Pierre Bourdieu's theory, the middle class are in an ambiguous position, caught between the two social groups, trying to escape one and gain access to another. It tries to emulate the standards the dominant class set, having a high reverence for higher culture and subjecting their lives to rigorous discipline, resembling the rising bourgeoisie group from the Renaissance era. Hence, the codes of manner set by the dominant class are passed down. These class-specific differences evolve with evolving social standards and technological and intellectual progress. However, they persist, being passed down intergenerationally, even if they take a complete new form over long periods. Bourdieu explained the intergenerational persistence of class differences with the help of a concept he widely uses called habitus. Habitus is a habit-forming force, something that is internalized in us from our earlier experiences. It provides us with not only the context on how to behave in limitless situations, but determines boundaries for us in a sense that what is possible for an individual, considering the particular social group they belong to. It also helps them rationalize the inegalitarian social arrangements between the dominated and dominant groups, often producing self-defeating behavior in the dominated classes and thus acting as a self-fulfilling prophecy. However, this underlying description of the social groups couldn't be applied to every individual in a group. There are exceptions and many stories of rags to riches, people whose disadvantaged social background didn't limit their possibilities and what they achieved in their lifetime. And on the other extreme, there are some individuals who couldn't live up to their potential despite their affluence. Though the concept of habitus does explain how aspirations and everyday behavior appear to differ on a broader scale between different social groups that remain distant from converging. Manners have omnipotent significance in society, as if following them is an integral aspect of human nature. Its perception eludes the reality that they are historically situated and vary between the different social groups in a differentiated society. Instilled within us since our earlier experiences, breaking them gives a sense of wrongdoing, a feeling which isn't founded on an individual's ethical worldview and stresses the sacredness that these norms have taken within the society. This isn't to say manners are necessarily bad. Politeness and cleanliness being a part of the general etiquette around the world are admirable qualities. Table manners, if devoid of benevolence, also doesn't have anything negative about them. It creates division in society only when it takes on the character of distinguishing an individual from others. Class distinctions exist when supported by underlying economic differences between different social groups and are accentuated by different modes of conduct that develop in social groups. Even those who understand the bleak reality of these differences occasionally play a role in furthering these differences, not realizing that some of the etiquettes they follow serve only as a mark of distinguishing themselves from disadvantaged groups. But again, this is not to say that all etiquettes have a negative value. Nor is it possible to eradicate the differences in social classes if they are supported by economic inequality.